Today's guest is Marie Morin, and we had the most amazing conversation. I love it when a conversation just flows so freely and it's just somebody you connect with at a deeper level. She is a wellness coach. She has a wide variety of experiences in her background. Plus, she's mom of 8, which shocked me when she told me that. But she has gotten into specifically helping people with estrangement. I read an article she wrote, and I wanted to have her come on because I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with over our lives. Maybe you're not estranged from somebody now, but maybe you were. Maybe you will be at some point. So her tips are so great. And I am suffering from an estrangement with my sister. So we talk about that. It was almost like a therapy session for me. But she, like I said, has done a variety of things, has gained so much wisdom over time. And I think particularly if we're open to it and explore and develop ourselves, continue to grow, focus on personal development, ultimately we find out who we really are and what we're passionate about. And Marie has done that, and she's helping people with it based on her lived experience, which I think a lot of us have that for a reason. So she and I had this most amazing conversation. And guess what? You get to be a fly on the wall and listen to it. And if you want, tune into my YouTube channel because she is also beautiful. She's a beautiful human being inside and out. So without further ado, let's get to the interview now. Welcome to another episode of Living Your Sparked Second Half. And I have Marie Morin with me, and she and I have been talking for almost 20 minutes. We just met each other, but we could go on and on. So we said, okay, let's just hit record and we can record our conversation. One of the things that attracted me to Marie and why I reached out to her to come on the podcast is because she is a wellness coach, but she specializes in something I think is very important and is something that we should talk about. And that is estrangement and, more importantly, family repair. So, welcome. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, yes, you're okay if I say your age?
Oh boy, we're going to start with that.
Well, you just look so remarkable. And I have a YouTube channel, so people can listen audio wise, but I love them to tune into my YouTube channel because they can actually see us and see our expressions and see our inflection. I just think it's more fun to listen to somebody and watch them.
Yeah.
And you're just lovely. And it's amazing and remarkable that you are older than me. So I just thought we should start there because I have a lot of listeners who are your age, and they always think they're too old. They think they're too old to do this. I can't start something new. I don't know enough. Comparisonitis. And I know one of the things that you help people with is perfectionism. And we have a lot of that going around and limiting beliefs. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that it's a limiting belief to think that you're not capable and that your age is holding you back in some way. So that's why I like to start with that because it's very relatable.
All right. Okay, here it goes. Ready? I'm going to close my eyes and just spit it out. I'm 67.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yay. Yay.
Yay.
And I just found out that we are actually at my age. I believe it starts in, oh dear, 1954. It's called the Jones generation. And that relates to the keeping up with the Joneses. So that's the inside the boomers, between the boomers and the Generation X, which is getting a lot of attention right now. So yeah,
That is so interesting. I
it
was
is a
listening
lot.
to a guy, he's a comedian actually, but it was a serious interview. And he was talking about the problem with baby boomers. And a lot of it was around that, keeping up with the Joneses, wanting to be perfect. And I, at first, I was really taken aback. I was like, oh, kind of a little defensive. I'm like, I'm not like that. But then I saw the truth in it.
Hmm.
And it did really resonate. And I thought, oh my God, my kids, no wonder they're, probably messed up because I mean, they're great kids and they've grown up to be great adults. But yeah, I can see how what I lived vicariously through them in a lot of ways, even though I was successful and had a great job. And I just wanted them to excel and I wanted them to exceed. And that is keeping up with the Joneses big time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what, that I find really relevant to that is that we had the kind of hard work muscle. We still do. And I
Mm.
think that's why anyone listening right now can leverage that same desire that, if anything needs to get done, someone can call you and you will get it done. You're that person because we got that muscle, right? But millennials, on the other hand, no disrespect meant to millennials, but they're the ones that are saying, well, I want to have a job, but I have to really like it and love it. And I'm like, hold on a minute now. Who's going to pay the bills? How are you going to pay? So we don't have that. We never like, yes, we thought about it, but it wasn't on primary focus. Does that make sense?
Oh, it
Right?
totally makes sense. And I think the millennial approach is actually a healthier approach. I mean, not to refuse a job that will pay the bills to get you by, but to always be seeking that thing that makes you happy, I think
Yeah.
is the right direction. And I think in our case, baby boomers, we settled a lot.
That's true. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you got to where you are now, because you have a great YouTube channel and a lot of people our age don't know anything about how to do that. And they might have a passion. And you clearly, at some point, because you were saying you dabbled in bookkeeping and accounting before I hit record. So I'd love to know that journey from back when you really didn't know what you wanted to do and how you ended up here where you are, so passionate about what you do, helping people and getting them to have better relationships, and then developing this YouTube channel where you're putting out content all the time that's helpful to people.
Okay. Let's see if I could do this in less than 5 minutes.
You can do it. I will interrupt you probably and ask questions along the
All
way.
right, good. So actually, I did my original undergrad in economics because I was like curious about how things worked in terms of financial and just it just was a curiosity. I did try social work. I majored in that for a hot second and then really didn't like the program. So majored in business, did a little, do you remember shorthand?
Oh, yes. They
Yeah, I
taught it.
did.
I didn't take it, but they taught it in my high school.
Yeah, God forbid it was called secretarial science back then, and we
Oh
were
my
okay
goodness.
with it, right? So I did that for a second. But then I ended up actually, I had the privilege of raising my children and being able to stay home for a while, which was great. And then when I went back into the workforce, and I already had studied, got my degree, went back into the workforce, I did bookkeeping and I was going to, oh, sorry, I forgot to say this. I was majoring for a hot second in accounting and found out, oh no, I'm not, this is not me. So I did the bookkeeping, even though I really didn't like it because I was good at it. But
That's a big mistake people make,
yeah, but
being good at something.
it
Yeah.
was bringing in the funds. So
Yes. Hmm.
there was, it was that thing, the hard work and you do what you have to do. And then I
Oh, can I
realized,
interrupt for a second? How many kids do you have?
oh gosh, okay. I have 8 children.
Wow.
I wish
You
we
were
could take a
busy.
screenshot. Yes, I was. I was. And I was a tree hugger for a while. So I did all that. We eat well, do things off the.
Off the grid. Did you
That's
live
it.
in New
Off the
York
grid.
all the time? The whole
Hmm.
time? Uh-huh. Yeah. Good. And your kids are how old now?
Well, they range in age, let's see. Oh boy, now I have to use my mathematical skills. Late 40s to my daughter is going to be, my youngest is going to be 29 in a couple of days. We're celebrating her birthday tomorrow. I have
Oh,
things
that's
to do. I
great.
got to go shopping, get stuff together. So yeah,
You probably have a birthday a month almost.
something like that. Yeah, we're busy. We're busy,
Yeah.
but it's wonderful.
And do you have grandkids?
I do.
How
I
many
do.
grandkids?
I have a bunch of grandchildren. There's about 16 of them.
Wow. I have six. So I
Do
only have
you?
two children though. So
Yeah.
I
Well, that's
thought
a good
I
amount.
thought four would be good. So yeah,
I-
that's good. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So I didn't mean to interrupt. So you
No,
went
no,
and you
that's
did
fine.
accounting and then you were like, nah, I really don't like that. Then
Yeah.
what?
And then I worked as a bookkeeper and didn't enjoy it, but did it. And then I realized, you know what? I am a people person. And I have actually, if I went back into my roots, I have been talking to people, listening to people, supporting them since I'm a kid. In fact, I asked someone as a exercise because I got into during COVID, I was like losing my cookies. I needed to have something to keep me focused. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take an educational course and maybe learn how to expand what I'm doing. I was already a therapist at that time, but I needed to have more. And through that, oh boy, I'm jumping around here. I realized I really need to expand what I do. So the therapy came in there because I wanted to work with people. But when I talked to my girlfriend from when I was a kid, she said, Marie, you've been doing this your whole life. You've been sitting there listening to people.
People come
So
to
I was
you and ask for help and
like, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's very telling. Yeah. I think it's also telling what TV shows you're interested in, what you do on the side, how do you spend your time? If you like to be by yourself and read books, you're probably more of a researcher kind of person. You're probably not going to be a good coach. But that's one thing that a pattern that I found later in life was, I like these reality shows, but they're all social interaction. It's like these people that their real personalities come out and like what makes them tick. And I'm so fascinated with personality types and how people interact. So I love that you honed in on estrangement because it really is easy to get estranged. It's not hard. And I think a lot of times, I mean, I think we probably have control over it, but we think we don't. So I'd love to hear how you got into it and what are the top tips that you can. Well, there's two ways of looking at it. It's like I'm stuck, I'm estranged, it's too late, or I don't want to get estranged. I worry sometimes that that's a possibility. Maybe there's a particular person in your life. We were talking about in-laws in particular, whether it's mother-in-law, father-in-law, child-in-law, brother and sister-in-law. Yeah, I mean, in-laws can create, well, your own siblings can create a problem because as I told you, my sister and I are estranged. So let's talk about how you get unestranged first, maybe,
Mhm.
and then how do you avoid it? So, how do you repair something?
Okay. So not every relationship is repairable. Uh,
Mm,
and it's hard to hear that because in some cases, depending on who it is, if there's been any abuse or toxic behavior, the person that's been harmed, because this does happen, they going back into the relationship is like going into a burning building.
oh, that's so true. Yeah.
And so to do that while so what happens is if when someone estranges, of course the people around them don't always know the details and they'll say things like, oh, you should just go make up with your mother or you should go make up with your sister, but they don't know the details that you've been traumatized by this person and you're still trying to make your life be okay in light of the fact that someone has hurt you and to such a degree. And I really want people to understand this because there's a lot of pain out there and you can't just go back into a burning building. You need to heal. Is it possible when there's been harm done? Yes, people have done it, but it takes a lot because you have to heal. You have to be able to come out stronger so that when someone kind of re-injures you, because it happens, you can't be triggered so that you're suffering again in the trauma. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how do you get out of it when there is estrangement? And sometimes there's estrangement where there has been a degree of maltreatment, but not at the level of that it can't be repaired, so that the person is willing and they're saying, you know what, I am willing to go back in and give it a try, but my family member has to be committed to change. And that change means they're not going to do the behaviors that they did before.
Mm.
And that's a big deal. So did that answer the question?
Yeah, sometimes I think that, well, at least I'm speaking from my own personal experience, but I feel like with my sister and I, that it's a misperception of reality.
Mm,
That
yeah.
I don't think either of us, well, I should also say that there was a history of dysfunction in generations, which is really odd, but I'm sure this happens. There's probably some ancestral DNA stuff going on.
Mm,
But my mother's mother, my grandmother, her mother was one of three sisters. She was one of three sisters, and my mom was one of three sisters. And they all had dysfunctional relationships. It's almost like their parents pitted them against each other. And I feel like that in a way, my mom did that. I mean, I always felt really loved by my mother. But one of the things she did was she would try to be my best friend or my sister's best friend and always be on that side and play sides. And one thing that I realized when I became a mother of two girls, I promised myself that if my kids ever had a disagreement, I would say, it's your problem, solve. I would not get involved. I would not play sides. I would not say anything that would lead them to think that I'm playing favorites or whatever. And I don't think I was a favorite. I don't think my sister was a favorite. I just think she would pick these opportunities because she wanted to be our bestie, but yet she separated us. She didn't allow
mm,
us to be besties. And then I think we grew these perceptions. I think we're also very different people and you expect the other person to think and be like you. And when they don't, then there's that friction. So I think for me, estrangement was caused partly by how we were raised in that dynamic, and partly because we just don't really understand each other. Does that
mm.
does that kind of relate to what you see patterns of that? And can you speak to kind of the family dynamic that might contribute to something like that?
So that's taking sides, and that happens. But I suppose that you and your sister weren't really connected when you were younger because there was that rivalry for moms,
Hmm.
and that would be natural. So if you're not connecting, then you might as well just be acquaintances. You
Yeah,
don't
she
have
never
that.
wanted me around. She always shunned me. And I remember specifically a situation where my parents were going away for the weekend and they made her take me on a camping trip with her best friend. So I was like the third wheel. And she tried to ditch me the whole weekend. She was mean to me the whole well, of course, she wanted a weekend with her friend and
Right.
her little sister was forced on her. But yeah, there was a lot of that dynamic where I looked up to her. She's my older sister and wanted to be. We were a year apart, so we would like the same guy, and that
Oh,
would create friction. And
yeah.
she would always get the guy. Yeah.
So it's interesting because I think that if two sisters want to have a relationship, they make a way.
Mm,
And the way is that whatever the heat between you, you decide that the other person doesn't have to agree with your version of what happened. That's
mm,
how successful reconcilers do it. And I guess that's the old fashioned way of saying it is you bury the hatchet. And rather than look in the past, you say, okay, we're going to have a forward facing relationship. We're just going to start anew and we're going to learn how to appreciate each other from this moment forward. And
love
I
that.
love that because I think that that's possible with people, but sometimes it means we have to, and I'm kind of researching where this expression comes from, but we can use it kind of loosely. You have to eat a little crow, you know?
Yes.
You gotta like say, oh, I'm not really, I don't want to be the first to call, but I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it for the sake of maybe it could be great. Maybe you could like rediscover something or get close and have that companionship of a sister. There's really nothing quite like a sister.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah, my
along.
college roommates they're my best friends forever. And they've one of them is an only child, and one of them is the other one's estranged from her sister. So she's kind of like me. Yeah, they become my sisters. And I think that makes it okay. But Facebook does these, what's National Sibling Day or Sister Day, and people are posting all about their sisters, and there's this like little like break in my heart that like I can't do that. I don't it's very sad, but I like that perspective because we do tend to bring the baggage, and our baggage, it comes from the same place, but it's totally different. It looks so different. It's like so true that we have these totally different perceptions of how we were raised and what happened in at that time and whatever situation we're talking about. But yeah, so I love that eating crow that we have to be okay with that.
Yeah. We do. We have to be okay. And that's kind of like a a universal value and character trait that sometimes you have to be humble enough to say, what was my part? What did I
Mm,
do? And start there. It's not always about the other person. I think of course we look and see that first. What did they
mm.
do to me? I'm hurt. They hurt me. That's natural. But then the expression of kind of growing and saying, how can this be better? What am I responsible for? Instead of just looking at it like that they did something to you. So that helps too, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I also think what's coming up for me is even if you don't ultimately get the outcome you want, which is an improved relationship, at least you extended the olive branch.
Mm,
At least you did what you could. You tried, I think.
yeah, I agree. I think sometimes it's a helpful exercise if you don't know and you think, oh, it's not going to work out good. She's probably going to do this, or it's never going to be okay. And that negativity creeps in because you're suspecting that it's hopeless, right?
Yeah.
But you ask yourself to project into the future, okay? 10 years, 15 years, and see if you're going to be okay with the fact that you didn't and all the possibilities that could happen in between. And we know what I'm talking about. If one of someone passes and you haven't put that, I mean, how are you going to feel? Some people are, you know what, I'm all right. I've decided I'm okay. And
Mm,
some people are like, you know what, I don't want it to be that way if they pass, that I haven't made that attempt to repair.
yeah. So true. I have a medium though, so I can contact her after she's gone. Might be easier. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I totally agree with that. And we don't think about our regrets until it's too late.
Yeah, it's true. I recently listened to, well, not recently, I think I've heard it twice, and it's an episode. Have you heard of the Happiness Lab? Dr. Laurie Santos. Well, if you're listening, this is a good one to add to your podcast list. This particular one is on regret, and it's outstanding because it talks about the idea that regret can be something we sit and get stuck in, right? And then we're hurt and we ruminate on what we could have done and why didn't we do it differently. But rather than that, which we normally we're going to do it, all right? It's just the way we're wired. Now, how about focusing into what can we learn from having done that? And that particular episode, the young woman talks about how her mother had asked her, "Can you help me empty my mother's house?" Because the grandmother had passed, right? And the daughter said no because I think she was busy working or something or other, but she really regretted not having helped her mom. Her mom ended up emptying her grandmother's house by herself. And so what the lesson of that would be, what do you do in the future? Now, when someone asks you something and you're so tied up in what's going on in your life, and I know this is good for me to remember, I have things to do. I have recordings to make. I have a blog to write. I got to clean the house. I got to go food shopping, all those things. I got phone calls. Ask yourself, what about this right now am I going to miss? The connection of being with someone and supporting someone in their time of need, but we're like wrapped up in our own thing. Granted, I know there's circumstances that we can't always just drop it, but I think it's an important piece of evaluating the things that we do in the moment. Sometimes we miss them because we're absorbed in what we're doing and we're thinking it's not a priority. But in looking back and taking the lesson of the potential regret that, oh my God, I missed a moment to show up for my mom, or I missed a moment to show up for my friend where we could have had some sweet connection, which is, hey, that isn't that what we all are here for? Are
Oh,
we here just for all this busyness? I don't think so.
yeah.
It's the moments where you're having these conversations with people where sometimes you're just sitting next to someone and you're present and loving on them because they need somebody to be there with them.
Yeah. And the other thing that just dawned on me too is, do I really want her misperceptions to continue?
Mm.
If I think that's what they are, then wouldn't I really rather have her know the truth of who I really am and see me for who I am? Why wouldn't that be important to me? And wouldn't I want to know what my misperceptions are and know the truth about her? It comes down to judging what we don't know because we don't live in the same town. We don't hang with the same crowd. So there's so many assumptions that are likely very off base about each other. So I am just very curious about how you got into the estrangement subject and topic.
So interestingly, I had estrangement in my family of origin. My mother was, and we didn't call it that. My mother was estranged with her sister. My brother turned out to estrange from my mom and dad, and it was if they're listening right now, it definitely was an in-law thing. I don't, I don't want to create problems, but lovely. She's a lovely woman, but it was an in-law thing. And I will say my mother was doing the definite, had she racked up a bunch of like no-nos with my sister-in-law. And then I estranged from my sister, and so fast forward, whatever year that was, I think it was 3 years ago when I started writing blogs for 60 and Me. Vanya, the editor, said, she posed the question about estrangement. And I thought, I'm almost ready to do an expletive here. I thought, holy smokes, gosh, I know a lot about that.
It's right
You
up my
know,
alley.
Yeah, I know a lot about that. And by the way, I'm very curious as to what on earth, because I needed answers done. And a lot of it, there's a saying for people that go to graduate school, especially for psychological stuff, is that we're all, when you do your dissertation and your theses, they're usually about something about you, right? So estrangement began as a me search. So I was
Mm.
doing research because I needed answers. That's how it began. All right, I confessed. It's true.
Yeah, but I think a lot of what attracts us is from our lived experience
Exactly. And
because
it
we
was.
already have that wisdom. We might need more through research, etc. But there's a reason I believe that we go through these things.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. So that was kind of the origin, and there's more to it as well. And I'm very protective sometimes in talking about it because I don't want to create more friction than I have to, because this is a public space. So
Yeah, you got to give credit to people that say things that their family is listening and they're being super vulnerable, but at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, what's going to be the repercussion from that honesty.
I
Uh,
know. I
yeah.
know. Yeah.
I know
And
my sister doesn't listen to any of my podcasts, but I don't think I've said anything that isn't true and that she wouldn't agree
no,
with.
not at
And
all.
I want to love her. Deep down, I have feelings for her. I wouldn't feel this loss of this relationship that should be very vital in my life. And I'm going
Absolutely.
through, my mom is in hospice and she's in her last days. And 3 weeks ago, they thought this is it. And so I messaged her because she prefers texts. And she was like, non-responsive, really. I mean, she said, "Oh, I just finished teaching." She didn't indicate any desire to see her. She hasn't seen her, and I don't get that, but that's her thing. So it's hard, especially when you're going through something like this and you really want that support and it's not there for you. And so that makes me sad, but it's not like a surprise. That's why you can imagine why when I saw your article, I was like, oh, we should talk.
I'm sorry you're going through that. I hope that something spurs with your sister.
I was talking to one of my college besties yesterday, and it was amazing. And she said something that made me take a pause, that made me think I need to do something. I need to reach out. I need to be more proactive. And if then I get resistance, that's fine. But I feel like I shouldn't just accept this because I think for my mother, it's important for my mother. And that's the main focus for me right now. But, anyways, do you have those tips for people? Because I think just because we've gotten past an estrangement, we've repaired, it's like car maintenance, right? You still need to go in and get your tires replaced. You still need to go in and get a tune up. So you constantly need to keep the communication open to continue to cultivate those relationships. But what is your best strategy for avoiding estrangement in the first place, or or going into disrepair after repair?
Okay, so with a sibling or anyone,
Anyone.
basic 101 communication skills is something what I think everyone can benefit by, no matter what the scenario, wherever you are, with any person you meet. Let's face it, we like to talk and be seen and heard. Who doesn't want to be the person that gets to do all the talking and someone says, "Oh, is that what's going on for you? I hear you. Wow. I understand what's going on. That must be really tough." Who doesn't want that? Right? Don't you want
Yeah.
that? Don't you want that? Well, I
And we're
want
so
it.
inward with like, how am I feeling?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want that. So if you're sitting here telling me that you're hurting, I'm not going to just say, "Oh, too bad for you." Or, "Oh, yeah, I have something to talk about. I'm going to tell you all about what's going on for me." That's kind of what we do, right? We don't really sit and listen. And I don't mean to accuse, because I am guilty of this, having not really known how to listen. And just like being able to say, "I hear you," validate. That's the key word, validate what someone's feeling. Because if someone comes to you and they're like, "You know what, I really have something I'd like to discuss with you," and your back goes up immediately, which is going to happen, what do? We defend ourselves. So, not a good strategy if you want to stay clean in a relationship. Just if you're triggered, just take a deep breath. Tell yourself you can wait. You don't have to say anything immediately. You could do it later. You could just say, "Okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to really give that some thought.
Yeah.
I see why you may feel that way, or you feel that way, or you think that." And then leave it there. You don't have to do anything immediate. So that's like basic 101.
Yeah.
And that's
And to like fight that urge to like, I think sometimes what we want to do is we want to compare feelings or we want to
Mhm.
one up someone. Well, you feel that way. Well, I feel this way. And so you're not hearing or listening in that respect. You're just trying to project back. And that is such good advice. I love
Yep,
that.
exactly. And we're also, when someone's speaking to us, we're thinking about, how am I going to answer that question? or what am I going to say next? We're not really in the
Yes.
moment for the other person's experience. And I'm sorry, I thought that that's why we want to be around people. We want to connect. We want to like get closer. We want to enjoy intimacy where you're feeling so safe with me that you would tell me like, hey, oh, let's talk about kids, right? If we're always like being hard on our kids and not really listening or whatever the case, how about the opposite of it? Because we want them to come to us and say, Mom, I really got to tell you something. I'm hurting about this. And I really would like to hear what you can help me with or whatever. And that safety doesn't happen if we don't, as you said, cultivate that listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's in all relationships, I think, right?
Yeah.
But it's not easy. It's not easy because we're not caught. We're caught in our own busyness, the things we have to do, what we want to say, we need, all of that,
Yeah.
right?
One of the things that I learned in therapy with my first marriage was to validate what you think, because, like I said, I think sometimes we misperceive, and people don't always say how they're feeling, especially men, but they might say something, whatever it is. They might make a comment and it triggers something that you might be like react to. And instead, what you do is you say, what I'm hearing, let me make sure I have this right. So, what I'm hearing you say is this. And then that allows them to confirm or to then express what it is that you might be not getting quite accurately. And I like that a lot, but that's not second nature to us, uh,
No.
as is listening isn't.
No, because what happens is if we're in a heated place with someone and they're trying to tell us something and our back is up, we're not thinking with our critical mind, with our prefrontal cortex. All of a sudden now we're in our amygdala, we're in the emotional center, and we're like, I don't think so. We're not ready to say, what I'm hearing you say is like, it's so unnatural because I hear people tell me, when they talk about, because I teach that too. And sometimes with couples work, you have to do it because people are like just going at it too much, right? But even in relationships, it's a good idea to do. But sometimes it feels a little awkward and contrived, right?
Yes.
So we don't have to exactly do it that way. We could just come back with something like, it sounds like this. Am I on to something? Like relax a little bit and not be just be curious that you are listening so you're getting what they're saying. Be in the moment of it. That's really what I think is tough.
Yeah. There's
Just
always something
stop
underneath
everything.
what somebody's saying.
Yeah, well, there might be and there might not be. Like your husband might be the guy that just wants to fix it. And you're like, for Pete's sake, I don't need you to fix it. I just want you to listen to me and
Yes.
agree with me. Just
We've
agree
had
with
that
me.
conversation.
you
Yes.
know and they're like, no, you should do this, and do you consider that? And you're like, shut up, I just need you to agree with me. Right? And they can't. They just
Yeah.
like, for the moment, they don't have the capacity. But if you take a deep breath and you say, okay, here we are again, I'm just feeling like you need to fix me, and what I think you're trying to do is really sincere. However, can we get back to validating? Can you just
Mm.
like come on my side for a minute? Because I could really need that. Like that's so much more, I don't know, genuine. Right.
Yeah. And sometimes even he doesn't want to hear the whole story. And so he'll cut me off.
Yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
that makes me mad. So instead of
Yes.
reacting like, you never listen to me, it's like, it's just expressing what I need from you right now is for you to listen, even though it might not be your favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody to talk to but you.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know. And that's great. That's so good that you got there, that you were able to do that. That means that you actually took a moment to say, I'm not going to react here. Because right now I'm like, oh, I would, right? You feel
Yeah.
that tension rise up, but you took a breath, and that's outstanding. That's good. And that's so
Yeah.
much more helpful because then you can continue conversing. You're not just stuck in like, oh, now I'm going to be mad at you. And then it gets worse, right? It just gets worse.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been such a great conversation. I think it's been helpful
Are we done already?
to
What
anybody
do
who's
we
like, yeah,
like?
I mean, we've been talking for 40 minutes almost. I can't
Gosh,
keep
okay.
anything 30 minutes. But I just wanted to wrap it up and talk about the very end here, just an additional tip. And one of the things that I have found helpful and that I teach is, and it does sound a little odd, especially if you're thinking about estrangement, but if you're trying to get unestranged and you're trying to cultivate a better relationship, you were saying earlier how we think it's going to go bad. We have this, it hasn't gone good before, right? So history, we always look back and history has proven. But when you can go forward with this clean slate, as you said, I think if you visualize the conversation and affirm like what the conversation, how you'll feel after the conversation in a positive light, there's so much. And I would love to hear what if this is your experience and if this is something that you recommend, but we have so much power over putting our energy in the right place that
Mm,
can help us instead of going into these kind of conversations tense and worried and feeling ominous about how it's going to turn out. Even if you think in the past, and even if you have a history of that, you can change it in an energetic way. I fully believe that. And so I wanted to get your take on that.
yeah. Oh, I totally agree with that visualization practice, with the idea of visualizing it and then feeling what is it going to feel like when I accomplish this? Okay. Or what will it feel like when we're both in communication again? And that's a wonderful practice. In fact, it is research based. And of course, I forgot the name of the guy that did the research, but I could find it. But I will tell you that the caveat here is while that's an outstanding practice, the focus can be not on an outcome, which is to say, this is what I really want. You're real with yourself. I would really love that we could just like be civil, polite, communicate with each other. I really wanted to go visit mom. I wanted to get her tail over to see mom. That's the outcome I want. But you may not get that. So to be prepared that you can control the way that you behave in extending your olive branch. That's what you can do. What she decides to do is entirely up to her. And let that out into the atmosphere of trust that it will go the best that it can, but and accept, come to accept, because it may be a really hard thing to deal with that she doesn't want to come and see your mom, because
Yeah.
I'm getting all hurt inside for you and for your
Yeah.
mom. I'm
Yeah.
feeling it right now. How sad for her, but your sister may not be able to for whatever reason. So if that's the outcome, you still need to be okay. Does that
I
make
had
sense?
the idea yesterday to FaceTime her. I never had thought of that before.
Mm,
And I also hadn't thought because my friend was sharing the two situations where her mother-in-law and her mother both died and how they transitioned at a certain point after they saw somebody who was important to them or after they were told something about somebody. And it was just very interesting. And it made me think maybe she's holding on in the hopes that she can have that last goodbye and how I can help make that happen.
mm,
At least I tried, and that's all I
yeah,
can say. But yeah, but I loved
yeah.
our conversation.
You're
I
gonna
think
have to
you
let
do.
me know what happens with that, because now I'm all emotionally connected.
Oh, well, it's actually today. I'm going to call her, and
Oh,
I've not
okay.
called her for more than a year. It's
Okay.
been a long, long time. I'm
Just
not going to use the
girlfriend.
text. That's what she likes. I'm not going to use the text. I'm going to
Okay.
call. I'll leave a voicemail, but I'm just going to extend the olive branch and ask her if she wants me to FaceTime and say goodbye. Isn't that what
Great.
weird? We had this conversation.
Yes.
Like the
No,
timing
well,
is
maybe not
interesting.
so weird. Maybe not so
Yes.
weird.
Yes.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much. This was great.
Well, yeah, it's made my day. So thank you so much for being
Mine
here
too.
and sharing such amazing tips. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, I sure do hope so. Thank you so much for having me.